everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are doing the mid-year book freakout tag. So this is a video that BookTube basically does every single year near the middle of the year to talk about the books that we've already finished and some of our stats and like what we're looking forward to near the end of the year. I did not do one of these last year, and I think it was because I was so close to being done being pregnant. Like, I have less than a week now until my daughter is 1. So we didn't do one of these last year, and it feels weird because like I know I didn't do one, but I do one like every single year. This is a video that was created by Chami and Ellie. I will leave everything linked down below for you there, but this tag has been out in the book sphere for forever, it feels like. We do have quite a few questions. 13 questions here. I've already answered them. I have my stack of books ready to go, and it's basically just gonna be like a mid-year check-in. So let's see what we have. The first question here is the best book you've read so far in 2023. This was hard because I do have some 5-star reads and I've sort of compared them to each other, but I haven't had that full like this is the best book so far this year, whereas like last year I do want to say I had a best book by this time and I knew it was the best book and nothing toppled it, you know? So I think this is my top book so far. It could have changed, but it's also one of my more recent 5 stars, so it could have been that as the reason. So that is going to be the +1 by Maisie Eddings. This is the first Maisie Eddings book I have read, but this is technically, I guess, like the 3rd book in this series. They are all companion novels of romances, so there are a little bit of like hints, a little bit of cameos from people from the previous books, but I don't think it was a detriment to me to read this as the first one. I absolutely loved this one. This has some fake dating in here, which is one of my favorite tropes. We also have a little bit of like friends to lovers, but also rivals to lovers, because these are two characters who were sort of friends because he was like her brother's best friend, but because of that they were friends, but they were also sort of rivals throughout their childhood. So we have a pretty good mix of that. And then we have amazing mental health rep. I didn't actually know going into this that that was what was going to be in this book, because it just talks about how these characters have, you know, things going on. Like the guy Jude has nothing together. A doctor who spent the last 3 years traveling the world to treat emergencies and humanitarian crises. Jude struggles to adjust during a quick trip home for his best friend's wedding. It doesn't actually go into the fact that like we have some serious mental health things going on with both of our characters. Like our main female character, Indira, is also a like pediatric psychiatrist or psychologist. So like we get really good discussion about that. I love how they did the PTSD rep because we do have that in here. And then I also like the fact that even though this is a romance with a happily ever after or a happily for now, and we're getting that kind of stuff, the mental health stuff does not get fixed because of a romance, because of another person. I love that fact, and so I ate this up. I read it as an ARC and then had to buy my own copy because I loved it that much. So far, this is my favorite book of 2023. Number 2, the best sequel you've read so far in 2023. I don't think I've read very many sequels this year, but I think this was the same answer technically a couple years ago as well, because I am slowly working my way through the Keeper of the Lost City series by Shannon Messenger, and this year I read Lodestar. Every single book in this series that I read ends up becoming my new favorite of the entire series, just because of how much we're getting into these stories, how much we're getting into the characters. Like, I just absolutely love this series so much, and because of that, this is book 5 in the series. I can't really get into a ton of what's going on. I know I've talked about this on my channel before, but I'll get into like a very quick sort of recap, I guess, of book 1 in this series. Book 1 follows our main character of Sophie, who, since this is book 5, has grown up a bit, but in the first book I think she's 11 or 12, and she has just found out that she's not actually human. she's an elf. Like, this is a society that is sort of secret from our own, and there's lots of magic and magical creatures, and we're slowly getting into like conspiracy things and bigger world problems, and I am loving it. It is very much like found family. The friendships in here are amazing, and yeah, I just love this so much. Every single year, I think this is the answer to the best sequel question. Number 3, a new release you haven't read yet, but you want to. For that one, I'm gonna go with one of my more recent acquisitions. It's going to be the True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. This is actually the like Afterlight edition, which is gorgeous. I absolutely love it, especially because underneath the dust jacket, the book is a very nice color purple, but it has the fireworks that sort of mimic the US covers of these books. And so yeah, I absolutely loved the Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. It was one of my top books the year I read it, 2021, something like that. And so when this was coming out, I knew I had to get it. This one follows Fizzy, who is the main character of the Soulmate Equation's best friend. She's a romance novelist, but is having trouble having romance of her own, and ends up going on the True Love Experiment, which I think is like a reality dating TV show sort of thing. This has some of the tropes that I absolutely love, and so I need to read it. I just haven't had it that long, so I don't think it's a big deal that I haven't, but like I want to read this so bad, especially by the end of the year. Number 4, your most anticipated release for the second half of the year. So I was not one of those people that could actually just pick one. So I have 5 here. I do an anticipated releases video every quarter of the year, so some of these are going to be from the most recent, most anticipated releases, and then a couple of these I think are going to be from the next one that will come out eventually. So the first one I have here is The Blonde Identity by Allie Carter. So Allie Carter is the author of the Gallagher Girls series, which was a YA series that came out like early 2000s or early 2010s that I remember reading and loving. And this is going to be an adult spy series where the main female character is actually a twin, and she has amnesia. So she thinks she's a spy because people are coming to kill her, but really her sister is the spy, and she's just sort of along for the ride. But it's gonna be adult romance, and I'm very, very excited. I already have this one pre-ordered, and it's coming out on August 8th. The next one I have here is Starter Villain by John Scalzi. I don't have this one pre-ordered yet because it was something that I didn't know about until semi-recently. It's going to be coming out on September 19th, and I read Red Shirts by John Scalzi, which is like a meta tongue-in-cheek take on Star Trek. And this one, first of all, the cover is amazing, but this is supposed to be like a quirky super villain origin story sort of thing, like a guy taking over the super villain family business, and very intelligent, I think potentially talking cats are the management of this super villain thing, and I'm very excited. The next one I have here is The Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. I don't think I have this pre-ordered either. I might. I don't remember. I love the covers though. I'm very excited. This is coming out on September 26th, and it's going to be a sequel series to A Darker Shade of Magic, which is one of my favorite V.E. Schwab series, and so I definitely need this. I think it takes place like 7 years after the original series ends, and yeah. The next one I have here is Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. This is coming out on October 10th. I do have this one pre-ordered for sure. I absolutely love Cassandra Clare, especially the Mortal Instruments series. Obviously, I have read almost every single one. I am one book behind right now. I have not read Chain of Thorns, Chain of Iron. I don't remember what that last one is. I think it's Chain of Thorns. I have not read that one yet, but I absolutely love the Shadowhunters world and the Shadowhunters series. This one is an adult fantasy that is brand new, not connected to anything else she has done before, and I'm very curious about what this is going to be. And then the last one I have here is Technically Yours by Denise Williams. This is coming out December 5th, and it's going to be an adult techie, geeky workplace romance. That's all I really remember about it, but I love the cover, and I'm very, very curious about this one. So yeah, I want this one a lot. Number 5, what was your biggest disappointment? So now I will say this is not the worst book that I've read this year. I have some other books that are definitely way worse, but for things that I was expecting versus execution of it, this is my biggest disappointment. And it's gonna be Girl of Nightmares by Kendara Blake. I absolutely loved Anna Dressed in Blood. I read it a few years ago, but I really enjoyed it. It is very horror, even though it is YA horror. It doesn't really pull any punches, like it's very much YA horror. And yes, it does sort of end on a little bit of a cliffhanger, but I feel like it could have been a perfect standalone. And so then when I got into this one, the tone is different. The horror aspects of it are very much pulled back. Like there's only like 1 or 2 scenes where I feel like it could have been very much horror, you know what I mean? And then the whole concept of what is going on in here, I don't want to get into because it is obviously like a spoiler for book 1, but it just didn't have the same impact for me as the first one. So like I said, this wasn't necessarily the worst book I read, but I only gave it like 2.5 stars. And like, if you love Anna Dressed in Blood, or if you're looking to read those books, read it as a standalone. I would personally forget that this book ever existed and just read the first one, because they don't feel like they go together very well at all. Like the vibes are off, the plot lines are off, and this just didn't need to be made. Number 6, your biggest surprise. So for this one, I'm going to be going with Truthwitch by Susan Dennard. So this is a book that I knew about. I had on my radar, but it was never something I actually was like, this is on my TBR. This is something I want to read. But I recently, a couple months ago, how recent was it? I don't know. I did a Patreon Picks My TBR, and I read 4 different books picked by 4 different people that are through my Discord, through my Patreon, and this is the only book that somebody picked for me. Thank you so much, Nikki. That was not actually already on my TBR. I had a great reading week. A lot of the things that I read were very good. This book I gave 4.5 stars, and I'm very curious and want to continue in the series, but it's one of those ones that because I wasn't sure I wanted to read, I did read it because it was picked for me. I absolutely loved it. I gave it a 4.5 because I felt like it just needed a little bit something extra, but I'm sure as I get further into the series, that will probably, you know, figure itself out for me. But yeah, pleasantly surprised, especially since a lot of people seem to be hit or miss with this. Like the reviews are quite all over the place, and that's part of the reason that, like, even though it was on my radar, I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to read it. I also just love the new covers they did for this. So yes, pleasantly surprised because it wasn't something that I was planning on probably ever reading, and I really enjoyed it. Number 7, your new favorite author, a debut or a new to you author. And so for this one, I'm gonna go with Wataru Hinekure. So this is a manga, obviously, but it's My Love Mix-Up. I read the first 4 volumes this year so far. I really want to get more into this. I absolutely love it. The thing about this is that it's very much like silly, but in an adorable way. So this is all about a love mix-up. This is male-male romance, and the reason it comes about is because one of the boys needs to borrow an eraser from a girl in class, and when she gives it to him, he sees that it has like a guy's name with like a heart, you know, like, oh, you know how girls sometimes do this, you're crushing on somebody, you want to write their name, and he accidentally drops the eraser, and the guy whose name is on the eraser picks it up and then thinks that he has a crush on him, and you know, the mix-up ensues. But then they also actually sort of think they might be having feelings for each other, and it is adorable. I love how absolutely every single volume actually has some sort of mix-up in it that just leads to more. And I know Wataru Hinekure is not actually the artist. The artist is Aruko, but the art style of this is also just amazing. It's super cute, super adorable. But then we do have some very interesting parts and like scenes. And it just reminds me a little bit of like Tamaki from Ouran High School Host Club. At those parts, like things are very cute and adorable, and then one of the characters goes over the top. You know what I mean? I love this. I love this so much. I think this is the only stuff I see on Goodreads by this author, but like I'm already at that point where I would read almost anything that they do, so I'm very curious, one, how this series is going to continue and then eventually finish, but also what else they're going to do. Number 8, newest fictional crush. I don't feel like I always have an answer for this one. I do have some characters that I think I'm going to mention that when I was reading them, I was having a little bit of feelings for, but I don't know exactly if they're exactly newest fictional crush, but we're gonna go with it. The first one was Jude from the +1, because I just absolutely loved how this worked, especially with the whole like friends / rivals to lovers. Like, I loved how he and Indira got on. Again, I don't know if it would necessarily be like a crush for me, but like I love the dynamic between these two. And then the other one would be Emmerich from Little Thieves. I really loved his vibe and the way that he was going about everything. So this one probably would be a little bit more crush towards me, just as like him as a person. I really liked how this character was done so much. So I needed to mention this. This is another 5-star read, by the way, for this year. Almost beat out the +1, but it didn't quite. Number 9, newest favorite character. Again, I have a couple for this. The first one I have here is Lulu from Well Traveled by Jen DeLuca. This is one of those books that I think I gave 4.5 stars to this one because the romance of this one didn't quite hit for me. It definitely feels more like, not exactly one night stand, but like a friends with benefits sort of situation, and then the actual love and romance didn't quite feel like a natural progression. But the characters in here I absolutely loved. Like, I loved Lulu as a character. In this one, she's trying to figure out her and her life and what she wants to do. She was like a lawyer at a firm who was just never really trying to promote her, even though she's been there for years and has been working for it. And so she decides to just up and quit one day and join the Ren Fair, and ends up helping out a couple different acts and like the tarot ladies. And so we get some of those kind of things in here, and I just absolutely loved her as a character and her character journey. And then the other one I have here is Charlie from the Charm Offensive. So Charlie in this one is also dealing with some mental health stuff. He has anxiety and OCD, but he is demisexual. I really loved the identities and the representation in here. And so for me, also being demisexual, I really loved how he was as a character and like everything that made him him. Number 10, a book that made you cry. The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane. This is another 5-star read, by the way. I really did get like full-on teared up near the end of this. I loved this one so much. This is another one that is romance. It's a male-male romance between a demisexual character and a gay character. But the way that we also, again, have friendships and found family, and we're dealing with some mental health issues, because not only does Charlie have anxiety and OCD, Dev also does have depression, and they go into full-on discussions and topics about mental health and what that means for them and their relationship. And again, nothing is fixed because of a romance. I love that that is a thing that is happening nowadays. Like, that is one of my biggest pet peeves, is when something that is very much part of you as a person gets fixed by the end of the story because of, you know, stuff that shouldn't be fixing it. So the fact that these characters felt very real to me, very well-rounded, and this is just who they are, and they are doing this together without having to be fixed, I loved. And yes, I did tear up and cry a little bit at the end of this. Number 11, a book that made you happy. So for this one, I'm going with Cinderella by S.T. Lin. This is a very short story. I know it's under 100 pages. I think it might even be under like 70 pages. If not, it's under 80. It's a Black trans retelling of Cinderella. So Cinderella is Black and trans, so trans feminine, and so I really love this one. It's also sapphic. I did not realize that going in, because I funded these on Kickstarter as like the ebook versions, because there's 3 of them, and I just absolutely loved this one. I loved how it did take Cinderella and made her trans feminine. There is some dead naming and things in here because of the fact that evil stepsisters and evil stepmother, they're not aware of the transness of this character. It is something that she is hiding from them. So there is this kind of stuff going on, but I loved how everything just sort of came together. I have seen some reviews on this of people wanting more from it, like more of what time period this was, more of what kind of fantasy this was, what kind of magic was there. But for me, I don't know, everything just sort of came together, and I didn't question a single thing about it. I just really enjoyed it, and it really did make me happy. Number 12, the most beautiful book that you've bought so far this year. So I'm gonna go with the Becky Chambers set from Illumicrate. This is something that I purchased for myself, and I have lots of very beautiful books from Illumicrate, from Afterlight, from Rainbow Crate, all of these book boxes that I'm subscribing to and getting the books that I want. They have gorgeous, gorgeous books, but there is something about the way that they decided to do these books with the holographic titles. Like, it literally is, I don't know if you guys can actually tell, but it is holographic. They have, some of the stars are like silver stuff on there, and like the spaceness, I am a space girly. My wedding was space themed, no lie. The edges and everything, like everything matches. Like, guys, these books are gorgeous. I think I'm showing them in the right order too, hopefully. But like, yeah, no, there's just something about these that I love so much. Like, I love the vibe of them. Like, I haven't even read these yet, guys. I haven't even read these. I just had to buy them because I know I'll love them. Because these are books that are sci-fi. I've heard them compared to like Firefly, and we have LGBTQ and found family, and I'm just, yes, these are gorgeous books. And then finally, number 13, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So I'm not gonna pick anything specifically because my reading tastes are all over. I do TBRs every month, but at the same time, like, I have no idea what I'm actually going to read, what I'm actually going to pick for those. So the two things that I'm going to mention that I wanted to try to do by the end of the year, first of all, is my 23 in 2023. This year I was doing a challenge that was created by MJ James to read 23 indie books in 2023. So far I have read 10, so we are pretty much on track. I need to get there a little bit better, but if you watch my most recent TBR, I picked only indie books for July. So I'm hoping to like get that number up. I have 13 more to go, and I'm actually hoping to not repeat any authors. So I think I have one author who I've read multiple indie books from. I think only 2 this year, but technically I guess that means I need to read like 14 more indie books. I really do want to complete that because I love indie. I just don't always pick it up as much, especially because I mostly have them on ebook. I'm trying to be better about that, and so that's one of my goals. The other one was a Stephen King project that I was doing. I have one vlog out so far of me reading the Stephen King stuff from the 1970s. I'm in the middle of the 80s, and I have been stuck for like 3 months now because I am hit or miss with Stephen King, and it's one of those things that I knew. Like, some Stephen King books are my absolute favorite, 5 out of 5 stars. I love them. And then other ones that I've read this year are the worst books I have ever read. And so I'm actually on It, which is a book that I love. 5 out of 5 stars. My very first Stephen King I ever read. I read it in 8th grade, which was a little bit too young, but you know what I mean. I've read it multiple times, and I think that's part of the problem, is wanting to reread a book that I know I love, but at the same time the book that I read right before that was like the worst Stephen King book, one of the worst ones I have ever read. And so I'm just a little bit stuck wanting to read new things versus something that I've read before, even though I know I love it. So we'll see. I do want to continue more with that further into the year. I don't know if I'm actually going to finish the whole project this year. It might be something I have to eventually end up taking into next year, even though I didn't want to do that. But I do want to read more of that. So I think those are the two things that I want to try to do by the end of the year. We'll see. And so that's the end of the tag. One other thing that I wanted to mention is I now have this little plaque. I don't know what to call this. This thing here that is for my reading goal. This is something that I bought off the Fandom Decor Shop. That's what they're called. I've been following them on Instagram for a while. They have lots of cool fandom bookish goodies that you can then order when they have their drops. And this is one of the newer ones that I want to now include in every single video. So it has reading goal. And I did pick blue because I absolutely love blue, and I didn't realize until obviously it came in that it's still sort of matches the background. Not like a ton, but enough that I'm like, should I have gotten a bright color? Maybe, I don't know. But my goal for this year is 150, and so far I have read 81. They didn't actually ask that in this tag, but I did want to mention, so I am over halfway done. I am a little bit ahead of my goal so far, and this is something that I'm planning on updating every single time I read a new book. So hopefully you guys can see where I'm at in my goal in my videos, just in case I don't like fully mention it. But yeah, the line is part of the thing that's printed on here. They have reading goal, and then I just put in the 150 and the 81. So I have now had this in like 2 videos so far, so just keep an eye out for that because I absolutely love it. Not sponsored or anything, this is my own money, what I paid for by myself, but I wanted to point that out. I do have that here, so even though they didn't ask how many books I read so far this year in the mid-year book freakout tag, I have read 81 books so far this year. That is including my DNFs, but you know, attempted 81 books so far this year. So that is going to be everything. I'm pretty sure because this is a tag video, I'm supposed to tag people, but like everybody that does BookTube basically knows around the end of June, beginning of July is when we're supposed to do the mid-year book freakout tag. So you're tagged if you haven't done it yet. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos coming out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I will see you then. Bye.